Shalom, Minister of Salzburg, gave no praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Kadash. Double honors to the Apostle, great Milson, and honors to you brothers doing the work, the most in truth and in sincerity. Yahweh's real name, of whom the world name calls God, Jehovah. Yahweh's real name is Yahweh. Son's true name is Yahushua, and we pray Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, meaning in, meaning that, and Sham, meaning names Yahweh in the name of Yahushua. Real quick, this is from Reuters. This is something I'd come across yesterday. The timing of it being very interesting, right? Because you basically have this article where it kind of tried to make it seem like the two weren't the two things weren't kind of related, right? But basically, this is just on the news that Japan. It goes to say as well that Japan, South Korea, Australia. Are basically not going to be attending the next NATO summit. Okay, so let's just grab a little bit of this, right? So it says Japan said on Monday its prime minister has cancelled plans to attend, right? It says joining other Indo-Pacific countries and saying that their leaders will not attend, right? And raising questions about future regional cooperation, right? So it says Japan's foreign minister announced the scrapping of Ishiba's June 24th to 26th trip just 3 days after announcing that he would attend. Okay, it says the decision came after U.S. President Trump joined Israel's air war against Iran and mooted the possibility of the Tehran government being toppled. Okay, so they then claimed to say it was various circumstances, and then if you see this headline there, it kind of says little benefit. But reading around the other things, right, about for instance the Strait of Hormuz, which it's looking more and more increasingly like that's the last kind of hand that Iran would have. I mean, it looks like the situation appears to have died down, but we'll see, right? We understand that for it to get hot, right, we would need to have the MOTB, right? But obviously we're watchers, right? That's what we've been commanded to do. So we can grab that real quick. This is Mark 13:33. It says, take ye heed, watch and pray, for you know not when the time is, right? That's why you have a lot of people that were basically saying get into the bit, is this going to be World War III? Is this about what's like? No. This is 1 Corinthians 16:13 on the same matter, right? It says, watch ye, stand fast in the faith, quit you like men, be strong. Right, so yeah, watch, right? That's what we got to do. And then Sirach 39 from the top says, but he that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High and is occupied in the meditation thereof will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient and be occupied in prophecies. And that's why basically everyone has been kind of just watching what's going on and what's going to transpire from the situation. Okay, and it's it was a major move forward, but as has been repeated, right, there are other prophecies that must first come to pass before we can start truly getting excited. Okay, so yeah, I found this rather interesting. So it says South Korea and Australia, which along with Japan and New Zealand are key U.S. allies in the Indo-Pacific and make up the IP4, which IP4 have also said their leaders would not attend, right? This is Trump had wanted to hold a summit with the IP4, a source told Reuters, right? Which that makes you think of certain precepts, right? First one being this, Obadiah 1:7 says, all the men of the confederacy, right? Let's go up this word here, confederacy, right? It's covenant, right? Alliance, pledge. This is a Barayath, right? It says covenant, alliance, pledge, right? Covenant making, right? Spacey, those have made a covenant, right, with Esau, right? It says, have brought thee even to the border. The men that were at peace with thee have deceived thee, right? As it says, and prevailed against thee. They that eat thy bread have laid a wound under thee. There is none understanding in him, right? So basically going into the fact that America's allies, the Lord is going to put the spirit on them to basically turn against America, right? I'm just gonna look for something in the other tab real quick. What did it say? right? Because I remember, right, yeah, because this story goes back a while as well, right? Um, right, yeah. So let me bring in these two stories here, right? Perfect, right? So, this is 3 years old. So this is something from here. It says China rattled about call for Japan to host U.S. nuclear weapons, right? Abe, and he got taken out, right? It says China has reacted angrily to calls by Japan's influential former prime minister for Tokyo to consider hosting U.S. nuclear weapons in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, right? And then you also had this U.S. and South Korea agreed a key nuclear weapons deal, right? To basically quote counter the Korean nuclear threat, right? Now, one of the things, and I speak as a man, right? One of the things that's always kind of intrigued me, right? Because you have certain of these nations that don't necessarily have nukes of their own, but they host American nukes, right? Is just the question of what will happen, in that day, right? Because the scriptures say, all ye that bend the bow, right? Like if these are weapons that are in let's say in Japan's hands or in Korea's hands, right? It's like what would happen? We're just gonna you know it's not something I know personally, but what something that I find interesting, right? It says Jeremiah 50 and 14, right? It says, put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow, right? Shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against Yahweh, right? So, just if because we've just read here, right, in Obadiah, right, how those are confederate with Esau, confederate with with America, right? They're gonna turn against them, right? And we're starting to see that more and more with certain of the decisions, certain of the acts that are basically happening at the moment, right? But like I said, it will be interesting to to see in that day, if those nukes are in these other countries, right, and they're under the, because I'm not too sure who operates them when they're in or when they're on foreign territory, right? But the scriptures, say, "All ye that bend the bow." Right, so that's something. Like I said, I don't know, particularly personally myself, but something I find interesting. Okay, well, let me read that. It says Jeremiah 50:14. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow. Shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against Yahweh. Right, so all of the different nations, that have their own nukes, right, they're definitely going to shoot at America. Okay, and you're at first, I mean, not even at first, but basically when the post first came on YouTube, and that was being broken down, you can imagine certain things like, well, how is that going to happen? How are America's allies going to start turning on her? But all of these different events are moving in that direction. All these different events are moving towards basically people being against the United States. Okay, because they're breaking international treaties. They're basically making it such that however whatever they want is what goes, right? Is it in here, right? So as at Jeremiah 50:23 now, right? It says, how is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations, right? And when you look at the operation that they just completed, where they supposedly destroyed Iran's nuclear facilities, right? What's one of the things that what was the name of the operation? Operation Midnight Hammer. Okay, so yeah, this is very much it. So the Lord's going to put the spirit, right, in in these different nations, right, to ultimately in America's allies to ultimately shoot at her, right? Now, we just want to grab this, but just want to say, when we're, because it's saying it, because we're referring to this article, these nations aren't a part of the beast, right? They work with the beast, but they're not a part of the beast, right? So just want to clear that up before I read it, right? But this is it's Revelation 17:16 says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, right, these shall hate the whore, right? So basically the EU nations, the NATO nations, right, they're ultimately going to shoot at America. Okay, it says these shall hate the whore and shall make her desolate and naked and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire, right? So they go and send their nukes, right? They're going turn against America, because the Lord's just going to put the spirit in them, right? You get people that say, there's no way that will ever happen, right? And on the minds of a quote unquote sane man, yeah, it would never happen, right? But that's why the Lord is just proving that He's the one in control. Let's grab this first, and we'll go back to Ezekiel, right? It says Proverbs 21:1. So the king's heart is in the hand of Yahweh, right? As the rivers of water, He turneth it whithersoever He will, right? In the same way, you had Pharaoh. Here it is, all the different plagues, and eventually the loss of the first son, right? You would have thought that they would have given up, but the Lord did what? He hardened, right, Pharaoh's heart, right, such that in fact, let's grab that real quick. Romans 9, right, this is Romans 9:17, right? So it says, for the scripture saith unto Pharaoh, even for this same purpose have I raised thee up, that I might show my power in thee, and that my name might be declared throughout all the earth, right? And that's it, right? So the Lord's basically the Lord is working on the minds of these different nations just to show His power in them. Okay, so back here, right, Ezekiel 38:10, it says, thus saith the Lord power, it shall come to pass that at the same time shall things come into thy mind, and thou shalt think an evil thought. Right, and that evil thought is going to be to push that button, right? These different nations that were in league with America, they're going to push that button too, right? Whatever arsenals they may have access to. So we're watching prophecy unfold before our eyes, right? And it's beautiful, right? It's beautiful, right? So as always, Lord's loves at the fine. Next time we say Shalom.